Hey everyone, Harold Fisher, WHUR News. Breaking news, a watershed moment in criminal justice history. Approximately an hour ago, Derek Chauvin, a former Minneapolis police officer, found guilty in the death of George Floyd, guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, guilty of third-degree murder, guilty of second-degree manslaughter. Joining me to talk about this right now are attorneys J. Wendell Gordon and Malik Zulu Shabazz. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining this conversation on this really important day.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for having us.
First and foremost, let me start with you, J. Wendell Gordon. Your reaction to the verdict handed down by this jury. Was it what you expected? Were you surprised? What?
Oh, it was absolutely what I expected. Obviously, I was happy about it. I was exuberant about it, to be honest with you. But I expected it. Anytime you have a quick verdict in a case like this with all the complexities involved, you know that whoever put on the best case is really going to be the one to win. There weren't a lot of strikes that were made by the defense. They really couldn't get the motor running. You know, they really couldn't gain any momentum with their arguments. I don't even think he figured out what his theory of the case was until his closing argument, when he made a reasonable argument by challenging the experts not being able to agree when the force became excessive. He said, you know, they brought in all these experts, and even among themselves, they couldn't agree when the force became excessive. So why would Mr. Derek Chauvin know when his force became excessive? That was the best argument. And not saying that it was enough to create doubt, but it was the best argument that I heard the entire trial. And if he had known his theory from the very beginning and honed in on it, he may have gotten a little more momentum. But this jury, they sat through a whole 7-day trial. It didn't take them another 7 days to figure out a verdict. So I knew right away when that verdict came back, and I predicted this very early on. I said, if it's a quick verdict, it's going to be for the state. And I said, if they get the first one, they're going to get all three of them. And I said there was enough evidence for them to get the first one and the remaining two. So everything that I said or predicted in this case would happen actually happened. So, yeah, it was what I expected.
So, Malik, the jury spent about 4 hours last night. And as the clock began to tick today, before they came out with this verdict, while we were still waiting, what were your thoughts? Were you concerned that there wasn't going to be a conviction on all counts, or perhaps there could have been a hung jury? What were your thoughts about that?
I didn't think it would be a hung jury because it was much too fast. And normally if there's a jury that's hung, it would be days and days, and they would come back and they would ask the judge questions. And you know when that jury is about to be hung, or whether it could go in the favor of the defense. I agree with Attorney J. Wendell that when it came back fast, we could tell it was for the state. I was worried in advance that this would be another case where the defense counsel, Nelson, that I call it using the King Kong on PCP theory, that the big black man who had fentanyl and methamphetamines in his body, and that would be enough to confuse the requirement of a substantial cause. You know, that I didn't think that the defense could escape substantial cause no matter what they did, but I knew Nelson was gearing towards nullification, and that there was maybe one white person on that jury who would say that I'm not going to convict Nelson. That was his strategy, and he lost on that strategy. And I'm glad he lost.
And to that point that you're making, Malik, in the court of public opinion, there were some basic facts: white police officer and a black man being arrested, and we are talking about some six white people on this jury. There were 4 black people on the jury and 2 people of mixed race.
Mhm.
What part do you believe race may have played in the jury's decision? I've been on a jury before, and as a black man, while it may have been in my mind, the evidence. This was not a discrimination case. This was a murder case. So
I
what
think
do you think that may have played, if at all?
I think race played a big factor in terms of the basic concept of whether a black life matters enough to hold that police officer accountable. And I think in that sense, there may be some kind of change coming here. I've seen judges' opinions from the Fourth Circuit. I've seen a judge write an opinion against a police officer and say that Black lives matter. I read an opinion recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this case should resonate. Jay Wendell know that we've caught a hard time on all kind of cases, false arrest, excessive force cases, all kind of cases that are not as egregious as this, but they are important. Mm-hmm. And I'm hopefully now judges will stop letting police officers out on qualified immunity. And I'm hoping things will change in the judicial system as a result of this. And I'm hoping so, because this was significant. Normally we are fighting uphill, and it's true, if there was not a video here, Chauvin might have walked, but we're glad for technology, and we're glad this is a good day.
And Jay Wendell, here's the other piece to that. Mm-hmm. We are going to, unless something changes, we're going to have another trial in Minneapolis. The Dante Wright case, again, a black man, a man of color, killed by a white police officer. What impact do you believe that case, that pending trial, unless we get some kind of plea agreement from the police officer, what impact do you believe it's going to have on that case?
I think that Kim Potter, get your toothbrush ready. Start looking for drapes for that little slot that you look out at night. You're going to jail. Minnesota is not going to tolerate this type of policing. These police officers who are stuck in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even 2010 to 2015, even up to now.
Even 2020.
2020. Policing has changed. Yeah. The people have changed. The tolerance of unconstitutional policing is no longer going to be the rule of the day. And I think Malik said something that I really wanted to bring attention to. He talked about the judges. A lot of the conversation misses the judges. So many times, judges are responsible for the injustice that we all face, that our clients face, and nobody blames the judges. They'll talk about the defense attorneys. They say the prosecution didn't do their job, or the civil attorney didn't do what they were supposed to. But it's these judges. And a lot of, I can tell you now, I had a case, and I continue to use this anecdote. I had a case where it was a criminal case, and we were beating up on this police officer on cross-examination, caught him in multiple lies. And at the end of that case, the judge told the officer, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to find Mr. Gordon's client not guilty." He apologized to the officer, and that officer was lying to him in his courtroom under oath, and he apologized to the officer for having to find my client not guilty. You see this all the time. The reason why Eric Nelson thought that his theories, just talking about a reasonable police officer, and continue to drill that in people's head. The reason why he felt as though that was going to be a viable defense is because it played well in front of these judges on multiple occasions. So much so that some of the cases don't even get to trial because the judges will make a decision as to whether or not the police officer's conduct was reasonable, and using qualified immunity as the shield to protect police officers from having to be accountable for violating people's rights. So it's the judges, and we leave them out of this conversation a lot. They have to run for office, and they'll come to your church and they'll beg you for your vote and everything else, and they'll sit for 15 years, at least in Maryland for 15 years. You won't see them again in church. You'll never see them again until their 15 years is up and they want to rerun. But you have to, there's a website called The Robing Room. And when it's time to vote for judges who are sitting on the bench, review that website. It contains the opinions of the judges held by the attorneys who practice in front of them. TheRobingroom.com. Remember that when these judges come to your church, so you'll know something about them. How
about that? I want to thank both of you gentlemen for spending some time on this historic day, this important day in social justice, in criminal justice, and justice for people of color. J. Wendell Gordon, Malik Zulu Shabazz, thank you both so much. I appreciate your time. Be safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And great to see you, Malik.
Pleasure to see you.
I'm watching you. You're doing great things. I'm watching. I keep my eyes on you.
You out too, brother. I quote you in some of my cases, Black man.
Right, be careful. Thank you, guys.